Greetings from Costa Rica. I hope you're doing well. My name is Matt Rosensteel, Costa Rica Matt, broadcasting live here tonight from Playa Junquial, Guanacaste, Costa Rica, with an absolutely no frills, no jokes, intense session of information tonight focused on the process of buying property in Costa Rica. I've imposed a somewhat arbitrary deadline of myself of 30 minutes to give a full overview of the process of purchasing real estate here from start to finish. And when I say start, I mean back home in the United States, Canada, or Europe, wherever you're starting to think about Costa Rica. We'll go from your first baby steps of purchasing real estate here through how you should find the perfect location. We'll talk about finding the right real estate team to make sure that you have the best people in place to help you with your transaction. And then we'll go over everything from making an offer and negotiating to due diligence, all kinds of aspects of the mechanics of purchasing property here tonight. Once again, it's a Wednesday night live Costa Rica chat. I'm your host, Costa Rica Matt, again, the owner broker of Latitude 10 Realty here in Playa Junquial. Do stay tuned after I give my intensive 30-minute overview of purchasing real estate here in Costa Rica. I'm going to open up the floor for any questions that you'd like to ask me based on what we've seen. I obviously have a deadline tonight that I'll be needed to get home, but I'd be more than happy to take your questions as they come up. After we get back from this short intro, we'll be diving right in once again to an intensive 30-minute overview of buying real estate here in Costa Rica. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Really appreciate it. If you like straightforward information about moving to Costa Rica, do be sure to hit subscribe. Without further ado, let's get started. Greetings from Costa Rica. My name is Matt Rosensteel, tonight with a 30-minute intensive overview of the process of buying real estate here in Costa Rica. My intention is to bulldoze through the nuts and bolts of the actual logistics of how you purchase property here, starting with your baby steps towards imagining a Costa Rica dream home here. I promise to keep it as short as possible so that we can keep as much information in one place as possible. At the end of my overview of purchasing real estate, I'm going to open up to the audience, anybody who'd like to ask a question here. I'd be more than happy to answer what you have. We will have to wait until that time to make sure that we can reach our goal tonight. I don't want to disillusion anybody. I'm going to take a quick note as to where we're starting here on the timeline. I'm going to note the time here at 7:04 p.m. Costa Rica time that we're starting. This is your Wednesday night live Costa Rica chat with Costa Rica Matt. Be sure to subscribe to my channel and stay tuned every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. for these chats. If you're watching this video subsequently to learn more about the process, I'm going to have links in the description to other videos related to the process, as well as little timestamps that show you exactly when I address the different phases of buying property so that you don't have to watch the whole thing, but that instead you can just watch what's relevant to you. Let's get started with our overview of buying property here in Costa Rica. Many people would say that the process of looking for real estate starts online with web searches in real estate brokerages, sources like point2homes.com, realtor.com, on and on. That is absolutely incorrect. And we hear from a lot of clients who have just started looking for real estate online, where really your search for Costa Rica real estate absolutely starts with the search for the perfect location here in Costa Rica. This is not as small of a country as many people would think. And rather than getting online and looking at homes, looking for that perfect lot or a condo that looks just the way you want it to, your search should start with a trip to Costa Rica to figure out exactly where in this amazingly large and diverse country you want to settle. I would not personally deal with realtors or even reach out about specific real estate listings until I had found exactly where I wanted to be in the country. And the rule of thumb for that search on your location should be spend absolutely as much time looking for the perfect place in Costa Rica as you are able to. If you can take different trips down to different parts of the country and spend a month here, a month there, or if you're able to even take a full year and really just explore the country before getting into the real estate market, you should absolutely take as much time as you can to figure out where it is that feels right for you. If you're watching online and you look up videos of Playa Tamarindo, Playa Potrero, Flamingo, Junquillal, on and on and on, what we're doing is trying to make things look as attractive as possible, and nothing will ever replace the hands-on experience you'll get learning about a Costa Rica community and actually deciding whether or not it's the right place for you. After you've traveled here, you've spent as much time as you possibly can in Costa Rica. You've even rented, hopefully, in a couple different seasons in your choice community. Now you've decided, I have my location. Your next step is to focus on finding the team of professionals that are going to help you with your transaction. Again, many people would be tempted, okay, now I love Dominical. I want to settle here. Let me get on Dominical Realty and Point Two Homes and immediately find the best possible listings for myself. Really, what you should do is take a step back from that urge and find the absolute best team of professionals to help you securely purchase real estate. That can start very much with a single realtor as your point of contact. A realtor in Costa Rica with the right experience, resume, references, somebody who's gained the trust of their community will also bring along the team members that you need to handle your transaction. Who's on that team? Well, let's look at, besides the realtor, you're going to be represented as a buyer of property here in Costa Rica by a public notary or an attorney here. Public notaries for US and Canadian citizens sound like people who just stamp signed documents, but in fact, in Costa Rica, they're the only people who are allowed to make changes in the National Registry. They're the ones that can send transfer deeds for your property to actually complete a real estate purchase and actually transfer titled property here in the country. Aside from your attorney, another person that needs to be an absolute top-notch professional to help you is your escrow service agent. Escrow services for Costa Rica real estate transactions are a very important part of helping you as a foreign investor be 100% secure. Rather than sending any of your funds to the seller or to an attorney or any interested party in the transaction, you'll be designating an escrow service agent, a neutral third party to handle the financial side. And that's another person that your realtor should bring to the table as part of this team to help you with your real estate transaction. Aside from that, you've got your realtor, attorney, escrow service agent. You'll need, obviously, a good team of inspectors, whether it's a surveyor to look at land or a home inspector to look at a condo or an existing home. And those are additional service providers that your realtor should be able to provide you. So my best advice would be, if you found your perfect location and you've decided, I want to settle here, next, start looking in social media, ask people in the town, Get as many firsthand stories as you can, testimonials about realtors in the area. Figure out who the top pros are. You might find that there are 4 or 5 really great professionals available, and perhaps some specialize in a certain type of property or a certain neighborhood, etc. But anyhow, take your time, find the absolute best realtor who has a stellar reputation. Make sure that they're registered with SUHEF, the National Financial Oversight Ministry, and then start to work with them. Ask them about the team members that they're going to help bring to the table to help you close on your real estate. The most important which, again, being the attorney or public notary and escrow agent. Let's move on. You've found your perfect realtor. You know you've got a great notary, reputable attorney to help you close on the property. You're ready to start looking closely at real estate and perhaps making an offer. Well, first of all, I think that the biggest key theme that I want to stress to anybody interested in purchasing out there is that if you hear a narrative that a certain opportunity needs to be purchased right now, or that you have an absolutely urgent need to purchase something, I would immediately pull the brakes on a transaction and really take my time in considering all options. You meet a lot of people in Costa Rica whose primary sales strategy related to real estate will be to attach that sense of urgency to any one particular property. Don't listen to them when they've done that. If you've decided that it's absolutely perfect for you, what you need to do as a prospective buyer here is first ask your realtor, how does this price fit into a broader market context? And as I've mentioned on my channel before, ask them to supply real comps for recent sales of what has closed for this property before you even begin making an offer or considering negotiating. That's a critical component because many people will see condos, perhaps they'll fall absolutely in love with the ocean view that one offers, and soon they hear from their realtor, this is the view, it's the perfect property, I think the price is great, and I think you should make an offer because it's a great fit for your family. Somebody at that moment emotionally wants to say, yes, I'm ready to proceed with an offer, but you should be willing to look your realtor in the eye and say, let's talk about this price in the market. Is it realistic, or is it one of these prices that's just been thrown out there because a seller is hoping to catch a very anxious buyer? Do your research, make your realtor look up the comps in the National Registry, and take your time to evaluate if this property, the one that you love, is reasonably priced in a broader market context. When you're ready to make that offer, my biggest single piece of advice would be do not make informal offers, and in fact, stick to 100% of the time making formal offers here in Costa Rica presented as an option to purchase agreement or some kind of potential purchase and sale agreement. When you make an informal offer here in Costa Rica, you may be making it to a seller who has heard that kind of thing a million times. They may have had buyers walk away from transactions, deals fall through for all kinds of reasons, and sellers will not give you a good negotiating position unless you make a formal offer. That formal offer in the option to purchase agreement format, I'm going to quickly try and share my screen here so that you can see. What does the option to purchase agreement include? Well, it's not an incredibly complex legal document, but it is a 6-page agreement that goes over everything that you'll be doing in the sale process. It really doesn't leave any part of the closing process to chance, and that's extremely important when you're negotiating, because one of the top reasons deals will fall through here in Costa Rica is that clients, sellers, and buyers make a deal and have a different understanding of where things will go after they've essentially agreed to terms. So you can see the option to purchase agreement I'm showing you here as a Microsoft Word document is essentially a 20 or 17 clause document that I start working with. If you're purchasing property in Costa Rica and you're interested in an area that's different than the place that I can be of service to you, I'm more than happy to share this format. It's absolutely no problem. But it contains strict terms and very clear indications of where things will go once you've finished negotiating and agreed to move forward. So you present your absolutely formal offer, this option to purchase agreement, with your signature on it, which enables the seller to look at it and consider your offer in a very serious format that if I countersign this, my property is under contract and I'm moving towards a sale. It's a very attractive, powerful thing with sellers. And if you just walk by and sort of say, hey, I'll give you $50,000 for your lot, you don't give yourself any room in that seller's mind where they're thinking, wow, this is a real buyer. I could actually have that cash. So 100% stick to formal offers. To touch on negotiating very quickly here in Costa Rica, you will often submit a first formal offer and then verbally negotiate afterwards. You know, maybe the listing price is $400,000. You start off with a formal offer at $350,000. The seller might verbally come back at $375,000. And at that point, your agent needs to reformalize, put into a new offer that $375,000 offer. In terms of working with sellers in negotiations and what I would advise people, one of the most frustrating trends I see in Costa Rica is that buyers will try to impose their perspective on a price. They'll say to me as a buyer's agent, well, tell them that the sink needs to be fixed, that the kitchen is uncomfortable, that the island is too high, that I would need to remodel this, that, and the other. And what you need to understand, I think, about human psychology is that there's no faster way to make somebody entrenched in their position than by contradicting their opinions, because human beings are brutish. We hate to be contradicted. And if you try to present your offer with all kinds of qualifying information, I see this wrong, I don't think your ocean view is really that good compared to lot 18, you're only going to make a seller angry. Whereas your opportunity to present a formal offer in the most respectful terms is really what you should pursue. Looking here, I think I'm at approximately 15 minutes. We're about halfway through my notes here, I hope. But let's go over further the process, what's included in your offer, that option to purchase agreement, and some of the things that are clearly defined. First of all, there's obviously those big terms, the price that you're willing to pay, the timeline for closing, and especially the timelines for due diligence and your deposit. Let's take a moment and talk about timelines here in general for Costa Rica real estate deals. You would see that most closings here happen, or at least agreed to happen, about 45 to 60 calendar days from the date that an option to purchase agreement is signed. That's the majority, lion's share of contracts would say, let's close in 6 weeks or 2 months. You might see that process shortened to 30 days for simple sales, if we're talking an undeveloped piece of property that's inexpensive, or very often you will see that process lengthened by complicated properties. For example, I've been working with one of the most patient buyers on earth through a concession sale. We've had to do enormous amounts of due diligence, finding old files. We are beyond 60 days for closing now. I don't even care to think how long we've extended this. So you do see it go beyond 2 months for complicated properties. You might see shorter timelines, but to be honest, right now in our market with a ton of momentum happening and a lot of activity, you're not seeing people successfully close deals on those shorter timelines because everybody is overwhelmed right now. The realtors, notaries, escrow agents are all dealing with too much work. And I would not say that this is the time to be saying we can close any kind of property in 1 month. Another important timeline that is defined in your offer, and that's an important part of the sale process, is the due diligence period. The due diligence period can usually be about 1 month from the date that the option to purchase agreement is signed. During that time, your deposit is refundable. As a buyer, you'll see that you're very protected, generally speaking, by contracts. You're given very ample room to leave a contract, and whether the due diligence process brings up something that spooks you or you've just realized it's not right, you do have a number of ways that you can leave an option to purchase agreement. And so during that 30-day period, you're doing all of the due diligence studies on the property to determine whether or not you do want to close on it. And finally, the other timeline will be your deposit timeline. Most contracts here in Guanacaste are currently structured so that a buyer will offer a 10% deposit about 10 business days, again, from the date that that option to purchase agreement is signed by both parties. That's to say, we've negotiated, I submitted my first offer, got a counter, we've come to a new agreement that works for everybody. Both buyer and seller sign on July 1st. Usually you would have a due diligence period. You do see timelines of 20 days where at July 21st, the due diligence period would be over. You also see very often that it would expire August 1st. So you've made your 10% deposit within that 10 business day deadline. Or rather, let's take a quick step back. I want to mention, in order to do that deposit and really start sending money to Costa Rica, remember, you should be working with a third-party neutral escrow service to handle the funds. And so to line up to send your deposit, your first 10 days of your real estate transaction, really you're working with your escrow agent. They're going to ask you for a know your customer form, know your client form. They need you to prove the origin of funds, and they'll also ask for just financial due diligence information that they need to comply with Costa Rica national anti-money laundering laws. So you submit all this documentation to your escrow agent. They will give you instructions to make your initial deposit. Again, that's usually 10% sent within 10 business days. And you wire that initial deposit. That moment is usually when the attorneys get a little bit serious about beginning their due diligence review. To be clear, it is your Costa Rica public attorneys, your public notary, it is their responsibility to conduct full due diligence on a property and ensure that not only do you understand all of the liabilities, outstanding obligations, etc., but that the seller is transferring the property without any of those strings attached. I have seen sales where sellers will transfer a property that still have an outstanding tax possibility, that still have labor issues, on, where buyers are accepting those conditions. But the job of your public notary, the attorney who you chose to represent you at closing, is to absolutely give you the full picture and to help you walk away from a transaction if it's not right. I can't stress enough here, having chosen your realtor, hopefully they have an attorney who is absolutely keeping your best interests first. You do meet Costa Rica attorneys who don't necessarily do their full due diligence, gloss over the details and they sort of just are there to hope that deals work out. You want an attorney who's willing to give you the absolutely ugliest details concerning potential liabilities, problems with the title, etc. Your attorney will look at the title. It's information that's available in the National Registry. You can find any public title information using a free account on rnpdigital.com. It's an open database, and public notaries use it to look up a title, find any liens, and then they can actually pull the related documentation from whether it's the registered land survey that appears on the title. They can pull documents related to denuncia, which would be a lawsuit. They can find any information about the property legally that they should be presenting to you. In addition to the attorney reviewing the title, if you're purchasing land, you'll need to get a number of due diligence documents to ensure that you'll be able to get a building permit. Those are going to include your water availability letter, which is issued by the local water supplier, your electric availability letter, also issued by the utility in the area. You're going to need your land use certificate or your estudio de uso de suelo. That's issued by the municipality. You'll also need, in any case, documents certifying that a property, whether it's a home, condo, or land, are up to date on their HOA dues, their property taxes, and any outstanding financial obligations that they might have. If you're looking at a house or condo rather than just land, obviously you're going to add a home inspector into the mix. And whether it seems expensive or whether it seems overkill because you've stayed in a property, do get a home inspection here. You might not always see that sellers are willing to make adjustments. You're buying as is here in Costa Rica, but you do want to know more about the property you're purchasing. And hopefully a home inspector will be willing to talk to you more in detail about what they've seen, different issues that they can see coming up with maintenance down the line, etc. Finally, whether it's a home, condo, or a piece of property, you'll also want to do a surveyor's report. Have a topographer come out to your property and make sure that the registered land survey matches the existing boundaries. Both your home inspector and this topographer might cost about $500 each in some cases, or upwards towards $1,000 for larger home inspections, for example, or a larger survey. Your topographer will verify the lot's boundaries, your property's boundaries, and make sure that there are no encroachments. And again, even though it might seem expensive, $500 to just verify that the boundaries are there, this is Costa Rica. And if you're going to invest 5 or 6 figures of your nest egg in a property, it's worth the $500 or $1,000 to get both a survey and a home inspection done, no matter what. Towards the end of the due diligence period, which again is about a month from the signing of the OTP, you should get a full report from your attorney regarding everything they found, the inspection, the taxes, the HOA agreements, minutes from meetings, on and on and on, and present it to you as a report for your approval. If you say, this all looks good and I want to proceed with the purchase, you proceed and everything's good. At that moment, you can say, no, either I'm leaving the sale or I need to see further clarification or an adjustment, a repair to the house, a new survey done, something to improve the property before closing. And don't hesitate to ask a seller, while you're still in your due diligence period, you can say, I'm not going to close on the property unless, for example, you resolve a border issue with a meter where the fence line was out of place, or I'm not going to close on the property until you've resolved X due diligence requirement. And so rather than fully approving due diligence, you can approve it with conditions instead of just walking away from the sale. You can say, yeah, I will still close on this property on our closing date, assuming that we finally have that water letter, the uso de suelo, or whatever's missing, and you protect yourself because you've still kept your deposit refundable based on those conditions, but you've also said to the seller, look, I'm ready to close as long as we wrap up these last due diligence details. We got 3 minutes left in my half hour that I promised. You've approved due diligence here. You bounce back to your escrow agent, and it's their job to put together closing statements. That statement should include funds to cover your topographer, home inspector, attorney, realtor, everybody who needs to be paid from the transaction. They'll come up with the math to show how much you've already deposited versus how much you owe. And your escrow agent will send you your exact closing statement to the penny with further instructions to send the balance. You may have to do further financial due diligence with them, submit some more updated bank statements, etc. You'll make your wire with the closing balance, hopefully at least 2 or 3 days before closing, and you're ready to close on the property. One important question to answer already is that up until now, I have not mentioned forming a corporation, and that's because the corporation can wait until your closing funds are in the bank and we're actually ready to close on the property. You really don't need to worry about it up until then because corporations can be created instantly, and you don't want to create one where you might still back out of a real estate transaction and end up with a legal entity here in Costa Rica that you don't end up needing. You'll also give the details for the transfer of the property and name your shareholders of that corporation, etc., in preparation for closing. And generally speaking, you will see attorneys wait to schedule closing until that balance is in the bank because they have seen here in Costa Rica endless transactions fall apart at different stages. Either the funds bounce because of international banking issues, or the buyer gets very cold feet at the very last moment. And so you'll notice a lot of times attorneys won't have an exact date and time scheduled for closing until we see the closing funds. We'll put it for 12:30 this Thursday because they finally feel ready. You've made it. We've both made it. You get to closing on your property. A lot of times you do not have to be here. If you're purchasing through a corporation in Costa Rica, you don't have to come back to the country. Your attorney can set up a simple proxy agreement so that others can close on your behalf. And you'd see that a lot of closings here are done between representatives of the seller and representatives of the buyer. And in many cases, as the buyer, you might have your proxy empowered person as somebody from your notary's office. It's not a role that should be played by your realtor because it's a clear conflict of interest, nor your notary themselves, again, because it's a big conflict. They should designate a third party to sign on your behalf. They'll give them a very limited power of attorney on behalf of your corporation. Meet up, sign a simple transfer deed, and we close. That transfer deed, which is in your public notary's logbook, literally a Costa Rica paper record that is still obligatory under law, and they send official copies of that transfer deed to the National Registry. Finally, we've got signatures. They're sending in the transfer deed to the National Registry. Your closing attorney will call the escrow service and say, yes, you can proceed to disperse funds according to that closing statement that we signed prior to closing. And finally, bingo, you're done. In physical space-time, you own your property. The National Registry here might not be updated for 1 to 2 weeks, showing that your corporation is the owner versus the sellers. But really, as soon as that transfer deed is signed, assuming it's legal and legit, you are the owner. You should expect to get keys to your property at closing if the case is applicable. And really, from the moment you've done that, all you're waiting is to hear that the National Registry has updated its ownership. Finally, once you own your property and the National Registry shows your corporation or your direct ownership, got someone walking by the window here, then it's time to update your utilities. You've had electric bills that you've been paying or the seller has been paying after closing, water bills the same. Utility providers here don't care who technically owns the property as long as the bill is paid. They'll keep the service on. Your last step in acquiring property here will be to eventually go to those providers once the National Registry shows your name as the owner and say, I'd like to update contract number XYZ to my corporation's ownership, and you will be fully up and running in your Costa Rica property. That was 32 minutes. I'd like to congratulate myself on coming very close to my goal. Now I'm absolutely going to open up the floor for questions. Though first, I'm definitely going to need some refreshment, and we might have people wondering where the refreshment's been so far. First of all, thank you very much, Renee and Kevin, for joining. Gene, as always, much love to you in Iowa. We'll move on to questions here. Kevin asked, is the purchase offer form standard, or will it be different with each realtor attorney? Great question, Kevin. That option to purchase agreement can absolutely be different based on the realtor, attorney, and brokerage you're working with. The format I showed you is an adopted sort of National Association of Realtors format with a lot of the same language. You'll see a lot of people using different formats. The most important thing, as I mentioned, when you're submitting these offers is that whatever your realtor is using, it needs to be very thorough. You should mention your deposit amount and deposit deadline, your due diligence conditions. If, for example, you need to see a specific document related to a particular property, absolutely you can put that in an offer. Really, you just have to make sure that 100% everything from your signed offer to closing is included in that contract, so that once you've made an agreement with the seller, there's nothing nebulous or no room for people to later get angry and say, well, that's not what we agreed upon, and try to pull out of the sale. At what pricing range do you see the most inventory? In just a moment. And this might be a question possibly from Ted. Oh, that was a long 30 minutes without a single sip. Right now in Guanacaste, the bulk of the real estate inventory, it's tough to pinpoint. There are different markets, and really I would say that in tourism areas, the real hubs like Tamarindo, Potrero, Flamingo, places with great surf breaks, the inventory there, the bulk of it really is from $400,000 up. You do see $200,000 and $300,000 properties in those markets, but those were the first condos, homes, and lots to be sold when we had our reopening surge after COVID. And really, a lot of the properties that remain on the market are those higher end, nicer condos that might be 3-bedroom units at $400,000 or $500,000, multi-unit properties, really nice ocean view condos at $600,000 and up. If you get outside of those tourism areas and look in rural areas, then absolutely you would see plenty of inventory at lower price points. And in those rural areas outside of tourism hubs, talking about here in Guanacaste, not up in Arenal or the Caribbean, Those rural areas would have all kinds of pieces of land for $50,000 to $75,000, really for a non-ocean view, just standard sort of lot that's available in many areas. You'd see condos really starting at a basic, simple place, really 150, going up to 300, and then homes mainly concentrated in sort of the 200 to 350 mark. Again, separating tourism hubs where you only see very expensive inventory on the market right now versus getting outside of those, the rural spots where you still haven't had quite as much movement on the lower end of the spectrum. Wilfredo asks, if buying a new construction, can I request utility services on my name without being a resident? Absolutely. You can have your utility contracts in your personal name, and really there shouldn't be any issue. One of the things that I meant to start off the video by saying is that, first of all, in Costa Rica, you can absolutely own property as a foreigner. There are exceptions to that statement. The beachfront property here can only be leased, or at least about 99% of the beachfront property here in Costa Rica can only be leased by foreigners. Anywhere back from the beach and really not smack dab on the beach, foreigners can own fee simple titled property just like you would in the US or Canada. Service providers are more than happy to work with you as a foreigner. You use your passport as identification to work with them. And oftentimes people have corporations that they're working through, but even if you're in your own name, you can get your water bill, electric, internet, etc. in your own name rather than a corporation without a problem. Do attorneys charge by the hour or a flat fee for the transaction? That's an absolutely perfect question. And the vast majority of attorneys representing buyers as the notary closing a transaction should be charging a flat fee here in Costa Rica. And that's defined by a national table that the College of Attorneys publishes every year. It ranges from 1.25% to 1.75% of a transaction's total value. And really, the attorney shouldn't have wiggle room on that. You know, they're held to the professional standard that they're supposed to charge these fees per transaction. But you see, for example, an attorney who might be handling a $2 million deal, or somebody who's handled 6 or 7 real estate transactions for the same buyer, really reduce their fee on that end. Now, that flat fee, there are exceptions to the rule, and you will see that in addition to the percentage that they're charging for handling the transaction, there are attorneys who will add a line item fee of a few $100s or $500 for due diligence support. Personally, I really like to work with attorneys who keep it to one flat fee, and I've had great success specifically with attorneys that have done well by me. Gabriel Chavez at P&D Lawyers, when he works with me for a buyer, even if buyers end up walking away from 2 or 3 transactions, he's a person, and other attorneys who are good at their job are willing to sort of stick with transactions until it closes, charge their fee at closing, and get paid that way. I'm sure there are plenty of attorneys out there charging by the hour. I would steer clear of them. Again, your realtor, assuming you found one to help you navigate the real estate market, they should have an attorney that they work with whenever they're able to help their buyers choose an attorney. And to some extent, you can hope that your realtor's good relationship with the closing attorney will help you not only, get a good fee, but keep the fee limited to simply closing the transaction rather than an attorney who's charging every single dime and penny because they're worried that they're not going to make any money on a transaction. So I find very frequently that the attorney for the buyer is getting paid their flat fee at closing, and you wouldn't have to worry about finding one with a particular hourly rate, etc. You really just would have to find one who would be willing to help you at the lower end of the spectrum of fees. But above and beyond, the single biggest requirement is finding one who's really going to put your interests first rather than just trying to get the deal done. Sorry about that little pause there. I'll leave the floor open for another few minutes here if anybody else has questions about buying property in Costa Rica. For the entire broadcast, I have neglected to mention that obviously you can get in touch with me by emailing me at matt@lat10realty.com. I'm looking for the little image here that will allow me to do that. And just not finding it here right away. Oh, shoot. But anyhow, that email address, again, is matt@lat10realty.com. Feel free to write me an email if you're interested in moving here, if you've decided that the Tamarindo area is right for you. I'm more than happy to answer questions and help people navigate the real estate market. My expertise is limited. That's a wonderfully humble statement. My expertise is very limited to the area, basically stretching an hour north of Tamarindo to an hour south. That includes the beaches of Playa Potrero, Playa Tamarindo, Grande, Langosta, Flamingo, down south through Avellanas, Negra, and Junquillal. Outside of those areas, I always refer people to professionals who have a much better understanding of the local market. To reference the beginning of this video, really the step 2 in your real estate search here in Costa Rica is to find the team of professionals that are going to help you. That realtor should absolutely be based in the community you want to search. And while I'd love to hear from you if you're looking in Dominical or the Caribbean or the South Pacific, anywhere else in Costa Rica, unfortunately, I'm focused on helping people right here in my neighborhood where I can absolutely be of best service to people. Do be sure to tune in to my Wednesday night broadcasts. I forgot to mention next week, Wednesday, November 24th, will be my first skipped evening. I'm going to take a break for the night before Thanksgiving. I will be back on December 1st, but there will be no Wednesday night hump day chat with Costa Rica Matt next Wednesday, the 24th. We have one more question here from Kevin. Can the deposit and closing funds be wired to escrow from a U.S. bank, or is a Costa Rica bank required? Absolutely, it can be wired from a U.S. or Canadian or European bank. You don't actually have to open a Costa Rica bank account to purchase property here, no matter what you're looking at. You wire your funds to an escrow account. That escrow account in some cases may be in the U.S. if you're using a provider based there, or in some special circumstances. But anyhow, you can use your U.S., Canadian, etc. source of funds to wire money both for the deposit and closing balance to your escrow account and purchase here in Costa Rica, both as a foreigner and as somebody who doesn't have a bank account here. So again, it's Costa Rica's government has made it about as easy as possible for foreigners to invest here. And in fact, it's part of their development strategy and how they hope to build the economy over the next, years. So anyhow, you see them making it as transparent, efficient, and secure as possible for gringos to invest down here in Costa Rica. So anyhow, that was my overview on purchasing property here in the land of Pura Vida. Very much appreciate you joining me. Again, my name is Matt Rosenstiel here at Latitude 10 Realty, Playa Junquial, Guanacaste. Appreciate you joining us, and I'll see you again on December 1st for our next Wednesday night chat at 7 p.m. Costa Rica time.